When my husband passed away, my daughter took our mansion and $40 million. Then she threw me out saying, "Go die somewhere else, you're worthless now." Days later, the lawyer smirked, "Did you even read the will?" My daughter turned pale because the truth said. When my daughter Amanda told me to find somewhere else to die, that I was worthless now, I packed my bags like the obedient mother I'd always been. 3 days later, I was sitting in a lawyer's office, discovering that my supposedly loving husband had played the longest game of chess in history. Amanda was about to learn that sometimes the pawn becomes the queen. Let me tell you how I went from homeless widow to the woman holding all the cards. Because honey, this story has more twists than a country road in Tennessee. 2 months ago, I was Lyra Wilson, devoted wife of 45 years and mother to one spectacularly ungrateful daughter. When my husband Thomas died of a heart attack at 73, I thought my world was ending. Amanda swooped in during my grief like a hawk in a Chanel suit, cooing about how difficult this must be for me. "Mom, you can't possibly manage this big house alone," she'd said, her voice dripping with fake concern. "The stairs, the maintenance, all those memories. It's not healthy." I should have seen the calculation behind her concern. Amanda had always been Thomas's favorite, his little princess who could do no wrong. When she married that Wall Street hotshot, Brandon, and started producing grandchildren, Thomas doted on them all. Meanwhile, I was just the woman who cooked his favorite pot roast and kept everything running smoothly. After the funeral, Amanda became increasingly insistent about my situation. She'd bring Brandon over for family dinners where they'd corner me with real estate brochures and retirement community pamphlets. "Mom, these places are wonderful. You'd have people your own age, activities, no responsibilities," she'd say. What they meant was no inheritance to split, no inconvenient mother to deal with. The final blow came last Tuesday. I'd been living in what Amanda now called our house for 6 weeks since Thomas's death, still sleeping in the guest room because I couldn't bear to pack up our bedroom. Amanda arrived unannounced with Brandon and 2 large suitcases. "Mom, we've made a decision. Brandon got the promotion and we need to move into town immediately. This house is perfect for us." I stared at her, not quite comprehending. "Move in? But this is my home." Amanda's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the cold calculation underneath. "Actually, Mom, according to Dad's will, I inherited everything. The house, the investments, all of it. I've been letting you stay here out of kindness, but it's time for you to find your own place." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Amanda, surely there's been some mistake." "No mistake. Dad knew I'd take better care of his legacy than you ever could. You never understood money or investments. You were just the wife. Just the wife." 45 years reduced to those 3 words. That's when she delivered the killing blow. "Find somewhere else to die. You're worthless now." I packed my things in 2 days. 45 years of marriage fitting into 2 suitcases and a small box of photos. Amanda watched from the doorway, checking her Apple Watch like I was making her late for something important. As Brandon loaded my suitcases into their Tesla, I watched my house, Thomas's house, Amanda's house now, disappear in the rear-view mirror. But something was nagging at me. Thomas had been meticulous about everything, and I was absolutely certain that's not what his will had said. The Riverside Inn was exactly what you'd expect from a place charging $59 a night. Thin walls, thinner towels, and carpet that had seen better decades. Amanda handed me $300 in cash, like she was tipping a hotel maid. "This should cover you for a few days while you get settled," she said. "I'll have Brandon transfer some money into your account once we sort through Dad's paperwork. Some money from my own inheritance." After they left, I sat on the sagging mattress and tried to process what had just happened. In the span of 3 hours, I'd gone from grieving widow to homeless senior citizen. The woman I'd raised, loved, and sacrificed for had discarded me like expired milk. But as I sat there in that depressing motel room, something kept bothering me. Thomas had always been obsessively organized about important documents. He'd shown me the will years ago, explaining his wishes, making sure I understood everything. And I was absolutely certain that's not what it had said. Thomas had been many things, traditional, sometimes stubborn, occasionally condescending about money matters, but he wasn't cruel. The man who'd held my hand through my father's death, who'd surprised me with roses every anniversary, wouldn't have left me destitute. The next morning, I used the motel's spotty Wi-Fi to search for Thomas's attorney, William Mitchell, the same lawyer who'd handled our house purchase and various business matters over the years. His office was downtown, a $20 Uber ride that cost me precious cash, but felt necessary. William Mitchell was a distinguished man in his 70s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. When his secretary announced that Mrs. Wilson was here about her husband's estate, he looked genuinely surprised. "Lyra, my dear, I was wondering when you'd come in. I tried calling your house several times, but Amanda said you were traveling." "Traveling?" That's what my daughter had told him. "Mr. Mitchell, I need to ask you about Thomas's will." He looked puzzled. "Of course. Didn't Amanda provide you with your copy?" I gave her the original and several copies after the reading. My stomach dropped. There was a reading? "Lyra, you were supposed to be there. Amanda said you were too distraught, that she'd handle everything and make sure you received your inheritance." The blood drained from my face as the reality hit me. "Mr. Mitchell, I was never told about any reading. Amanda told me she inherited everything." William Mitchell's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. He reached for a thick file folder, his movements suddenly urgent. "Lyra, that's impossible. Your husband's will is very specific about your inheritance." He pulled out a document I recognized, Thomas's neat signature at the bottom, witnessed and notarized. But as William began reading, I realized Amanda had lied about everything. "I, Thomas James Wilson, being of sound mind and body, do hereby bequeath to my beloved wife Lyra and Wilson the following: our primary residence at 1247 Magnolia Drive, including all furnishings and personal effects. Additionally, I leave her 70% of all financial assets, investments, and accounts totaling approximately $25 million. My head started spinning. $25 million. The house. 70% of everything. William continued reading, his voice growing more serious. "To my daughter, Amanda Wilson Hayes, I leave $12 million to be held in trust, with distributions contingent upon her treatment of her mother following my death." Contingent upon her treatment of me. Thomas had known exactly what Amanda would try to do. "Mr. Mitchell," I whispered, "Amanda told me I inherited nothing. She moved into my house. She gave me $300 and suggested I find a senior facility." The elderly lawyer's face flushed with anger. "Lyra, what Amanda has done is called elder abuse and fraud. She's committed multiple felonies. But she had legal documents. She showed me papers. Forged, most likely, or documents from an earlier draft. Your husband updated his will 6 months before his death, specifically because he was concerned about Amanda's attitude toward money and her sense of entitlement." The room was spinning. All those times Amanda had dismissed my opinions, talked over me during family dinners, rolled her eyes when I tried to contribute to conversations about their expensive vacations or Brandon's business deals. Thomas had been watching, evaluating, making decisions. "There's more, Lyra. The trust provision for Amanda specifically states that if she fails to treat you with respect and dignity following my death, the entire $12 million reverts to you instead." I stared at him in shock. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying your daughter just cost herself $12 million. Her inheritance is now yours as well. You're not inheriting $25 million, Lyra. You're inheriting $37 million plus the house and all personal property." The irony was so perfect it was almost funny. Amanda had been so eager to claim her inheritance that she'd triggered the exact clause designed to protect me from her greed. "What do I do now?" I asked, my voice barely steady. William smiled, and for the first time since Thomas's death, I saw genuine warmth directed at me. "Now, my dear, we call the police about the fraud. And then we call Amanda and inform her that she's about to receive the shock of her life." "Can she fight this?" "With what money?" "She's about to discover that every account she thought she controlled actually belongs to you. Every investment, every bank account, every asset except your house is frozen pending investigation of her fraudulent activities." I thought about Amanda in my house, probably already planning renovations, shopping for new furniture with money she thought was hers. Brandon was probably calculating how the inheritance would affect his portfolio. They had no idea that in about 6 hours, their entire world was going to implode. William's office became command central for what he cheerfully called Operation Justice. He contacted the police, the banks, and a private investigator while I sat in his leather chair, still processing the magnitude of Amanda's deception. The forged documents are quite sophisticated, Detective Martinez explained as she reviewed the fake will Amanda had shown me. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment crime. Someone planned this carefully. You think Amanda had help? I asked. Almost certainly. Creating convincing legal forgeries requires specific knowledge and connections. We'll need to investigate whether Brandon or someone in his financial network was involved. Within 2 hours, every account had been frozen. Amanda's credit cards linked to what she thought were her new inheritance accounts were declined. The house utilities, which she'd already transferred to her name, were suspended pending ownership verification. My phone rang at exactly 3:47 p.m. Amanda's name flashed on the screen, and I knew the reckoning had begun. Mom, where are you? There's some kind of mix-up with the bank accounts. They're saying Daddy's assets are frozen. Hello, Amanda. I'm sitting in William Mitchell's office. You remember him? Daddy's attorney, the one who read the real will to an empty room while you told him I was traveling. Silence. Then, Mom, I don't know what you think you discovered, but I discovered that you're a liar and a thief, sweetheart. I also discovered that your father was much smarter than either of us realized. You don't understand. I was protecting you from the complexity of managing all that money. You've never had to deal with investments or... I understand perfectly. You forged legal documents, committed fraud, and threw your 69-year-old mother out of her own house because you thought I was too stupid to notice. Her voice turned sharp, desperate. Mom, you're confused. The grief has been overwhelming, and someone is obviously taking advantage of your emotional state. The audacity was breathtaking. Even caught red-handed, Amanda was trying to manipulate me. Amanda, dear, let me clarify something for you. Not only did you never inherit anything, but your actual inheritance, the $12 million your father left you, is now mine as well, thanks to a lovely clause he included about treating me with dignity and respect. That's impossible. Detective Martinez is sitting right here if you'd like to discuss the impossibility of fraud charges with her. The phone went quiet. I could almost hear Amanda's mind racing, calculating, searching for an angle. Mom, please, can we meet somewhere and talk about this reasonably? I'm sure we can work something out. Oh, we'll definitely be meeting soon. At the courthouse when you're arraigned. You wouldn't dare press charges against your own daughter. Something cold and final crystallized in my chest. Watch me. I hung up and looked at William, who was beaming with approval. How long before she's arrested? Detective Martinez has enough evidence for a warrant. They'll pick her up this evening. And Brandon, his financial records are being subpoenaed. If he participated in creating those documents, he'll face charges too. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. Mom, please don't do this. Think about the grandchildren. I showed the message to Detective Martinez, who smiled grimly. Emotional manipulation. Classic behavior pattern for this type of crime. I typed back, I'm thinking about them. They deserve to see what happens when you steal from family. 20 minutes later, Brandon called. Lyra, surely we can resolve this privately. Amanda made some poor decisions, but involving the police seems excessive. Brandon, did you help her forge those documents? That's not. Lyra, you have to understand the pressure Amanda was under. She was worried about your mental state, your ability to handle large sums of money. So that's a yes. It wasn't malicious. She genuinely believed she was protecting you. By throwing me out of my house and telling me to find somewhere to die? Brandon was quiet. Brandon, here's what's going to happen. You're both going to be arrested. You're both going to face federal fraud charges. And I'm going to be sitting in my house, watching it all unfold. Lyra, please be reasonable. I was reasonable for 45 years. It didn't work out well for me. The police arrested Amanda at 8:30 p.m. while she was having dinner at the Capitol Grill, apparently celebrating her inheritance with Brandon and another couple. I spent my first night back in my house sleeping in the master bedroom for the first time in 45 years. Amanda had already moved her belongings into the space, replacing Thomas's careful organization with her chaos of designer clothes and expensive cosmetics. I packed everything into garbage bags and left them on the front porch. The house felt different now, not because Thomas was gone, but because I was finally seeing it as mine. For decades, I'd maintained it as Thomas's sanctuary, designed around his preferences, his needs, his vision of how we should live. Now, looking around with clear eyes, I realized how little of me had ever been reflected in these rooms. William called around noon with updates. Amanda's bail is set at $75,000. Since all her accounts are frozen, she'll have to find someone else to cover it. What about Brandon? $300,000. Apparently, the judge wasn't impressed with his history of financial irregularities. I certainly hadn't known about Brandon's questionable past. But then again, I'd been excluded from most family financial discussions. Amanda and Brandon had always spoken to me like I was a child when money came up, simplifying concepts they assumed I couldn't understand. They were about to learn how much I'd actually understood. 3 days after Amanda's arrest, Brandon's mother showed up at my door. Catherine Hayes was everything I'd expected, perfectly coiffed, dripping with jewelry, and radiating the kind of entitlement that only comes from old Dallas money. "Lyra, we need to discuss this situation rationally." I invited her in, curious to see what version of reality the Hayes family had constructed to explain their son's felony charges. Catherine settled herself in my living room like she was granting me an audience. "Brandon made some poor choices, obviously, but prosecuting him seems rather vindictive, don't you think?" "Vindictive? Your son helped steal my inheritance and threw me out of my own house." Brandon was following Amanda's lead. He didn't understand the full situation. The woman was actually trying to blame my daughter for her son's criminal behavior. I had to admire the audacity. "Mrs. Hayes, Brandon created forged legal documents. That's not following someone's lead. That's conspiracy to commit fraud." Brandon's lawyer believes we can reach a settlement that benefits everyone. You get your house back, Amanda faces appropriate consequences, and Brandon avoids the publicity of a trial. Appropriate consequences. As if Amanda's crimes were a minor etiquette violation. What kind of settlement? Catherine smiled, clearly believing she'd found an opening. "Brandon's family is prepared to compensate you for your inconvenience. Let's say $3 million in exchange for dropping the charges against Brandon. $3 million to forgive the man who'd helped steal $37 million from me. Mrs. Hayes, your son participated in a scheme that cost me everything I owned. You think $3 million covers that?" "Lyra, be realistic. Brandon has a career, children, a reputation to maintain. Sending him to prison serves no one. It serves justice." Catherine's polished facade cracked slightly. "Justice? You're destroying multiple families over money you never would have known how to manage anyway." There it was. The same condescending attitude that had poisoned my relationship with Amanda. In their world, I was just the help who'd gotten uppity. "Mrs. Hayes, I think we're done here." "Lyra, please reconsider. $7 million. Final offer." My answer was still no. After Catherine Hayes left, threatening to expose irregularities in Thomas's business practices, I called William immediately. "Lyra, whatever they think they found, it doesn't change the facts of Amanda and Brandon's crimes." "But could it affect the case?" "Potentially. If they can muddy the waters enough, create doubt about Thomas's character or business practices, it might influence a jury." I thought about Thomas, about our marriage, about all the secrets that might be buried in 45 years of shared life. "William, I want to know everything about Thomas's business. Every deal, every partnership, every potential irregularity." "Lyra, are you sure? Sometimes the past is better left alone." The Hayes family is threatening to drag Thomas's memory through the mud to protect their criminal son. I'd rather know the truth first. That evening, I began going through Thomas's files systematically in what used to be his study. Thomas had been meticulously organized, every document dated and categorized. But as I dug deeper into his business records, I began finding things that didn't quite make sense. Payments to shell companies. Consulting fees that seemed excessive. Partnerships with firms that appeared to exist only on paper. By midnight, I discovered something that changed everything I thought I knew about my husband. The private investigator William recommended was a sharp-eyed woman named Detective Rebecca Torres, who specialized in financial crimes. She spent 6 hours in Thomas's study, photographing documents and building what she called the real picture of my husband's business empire. Mrs. Wilson, your husband was running a sophisticated money laundering operation through his consulting firm. We're talking about millions of dollars in illegal transactions over the past decade. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. That's impossible. Thomas was the most honest man I knew. I'm sorry, but the evidence is overwhelming. He was washing money for organized crime families using his legitimate business as a front. I stared at the documents spread across Thomas's desk. Invoices for services never rendered. Consulting contracts with companies that didn't exist. Payment schedules that corresponded with known criminal activities. How long has this been going on? Based on these records, at least 15 years, probably longer. 15 years. While I was hosting dinner parties and volunteering at the church, my husband was facilitating criminal enterprises. Mrs. Wilson, there's more. The $12 million Thomas left Amanda, that money came directly from laundered funds. If the FBI discovers this, they'll seize everything as proceeds of criminal activity. The room started spinning. Everything. The house, the investments, all of it. Unless what? Rebecca looked uncomfortable. Unless Amanda and Brandon's legal team already knows about this and is planning to use it as leverage. If they tip off the FBI about your husband's crimes, they might be able to negotiate immunity in exchange for cooperation. My daughter and her husband weren't just thieves. They were holding a nuclear weapon over my head. What are my options? Legally, you could contact the FBI yourself, come forward voluntarily, and hope for leniency. You'd lose most of the money, but you might keep the house. And if I don't? Amanda and Brandon's lawyers will probably leak this information strategically. You'll lose everything anyway, but you'll also face potential charges for unknowingly benefiting from criminal activity. I thought about Catherine Hayes' smug confidence, her certainty that I'd accept their settlement offer. They'd known about Thomas's crimes all along. The phone rang. Amanda's number. The final gambit was about to begin. Mom, we need to meet tonight. There are things you need to know about Daddy that change everything. I already know, Amanda. Silence. Then, you know what? I know about the money laundering. I know about the criminal connections. I know that everything your father left us is tainted. Mom, listen to me carefully. Brandon's lawyers have been in contact with the FBI. They're willing to let us renegotiate our situation. What kind of renegotiation? Brandon gets immunity in exchange for providing information about Daddy's criminal network. You get to keep $7 million and the house. The rest goes to the government. And you. The fraud charges disappear. We all walk away from this mess. It was brilliant in a sociopathic way. Amanda had turned my moral victory into her strategic advantage. Amanda, you're asking me to help you profit from your crimes by exploiting Daddy's crimes. I'm asking you to be practical. The alternative is losing everything and potentially facing charges yourself. I looked around Thomas's study, seeing it clearly for the first time. The expensive furniture, the rare books, the art collection, all of it purchased with blood money. I need time to think. Mom, the FBI meeting is tomorrow morning. Brandon's lawyer needs an answer tonight. After hanging up, I sat in the darkness of Thomas's study, surrounded by the evidence of his double life. 45 years of marriage to a stranger. A daughter who'd inherited more than money from her father, she'd inherited his talent for deception. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated who I was when my back was against the wall. I picked up the phone and dialed Detective Torres. Rebecca, how quickly can you get me a meeting with the FBI? I have a story to tell them, and I think they're going to find it very interesting. 3 hours later, I was sitting across from FBI agent Patricia Kelly in Williams' conference room, telling her everything. Amanda's fraud scheme, Brandon's forgeries, and the extortion attempt masquerading as a settlement offer. Mrs. Wilson, you understand that by coming forward voluntarily, you're potentially admitting to benefiting from criminal proceeds? I understand. But I'd rather tell you the truth than let my daughter manipulate the situation to her advantage. Agent Kelly smiled. Mrs. Wilson, would you be willing to wear a wire? The next evening, I sat in my living room with a recording device, waiting for Amanda and Brandon to arrive for what they thought was a surrender meeting. They knocked at exactly 8 o'clock, both dressed like they were attending a board meeting. Brandon carried a briefcase that probably contained immunity agreements and settlement papers. "Mom, you look better than you have in weeks," Amanda said, kissing my cheek like nothing had happened. "I feel better. Clarity has that effect." As they laid out their offer, $7 million, immunity for everyone, Thomas's crimes buried forever, I thought about the woman I'd been 2 weeks ago. Grieving, dependent, willing to accept whatever scraps of dignity my family offered me. That woman was gone. When Agent Kelly and her team burst through the door, Amanda's face showed absolute betrayal. "Mom, how could you do this to your own family?" "The same way you could forge legal documents and steal my inheritance, sweetheart. Except my way is legal." The final twist came during their interrogation. Thomas hadn't been just laundering money, he'd been an FBI informant for 12 years, working to bring down the criminal organizations he appeared to serve. Every dollar he'd left me was earned through legitimate federal cooperation. Amanda and Brandon had tried to blackmail me with information that actually proved my husband was a hero. 6 months later, I stood in my renovated kitchen, now serving as headquarters for the Lyra Wilson Foundation for Elder Protection. Amanda and Brandon were each serving federal sentences. My story had become a documentary, a book, and a symbol of what happens when people underestimate a woman's strength. The best revenge, I'd learned, isn't getting even. It's becoming everything your enemies never thought you could be. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.